Welcome everybody back to AI for the Average Joe season 3. Can you believe it? We've had lots of people asking us, where's season 3? We love season 1, we love season 2 even more. When are you gonna start filming season 3? So Haley and I thought now was probably the best time to get started and start sharing this content with you again. Thank you so much for everybody who's engaged with us for the last 2 years. Hopefully we are going bigger, we're going better, and I'm so excited to bring with you today's guest, Rob Guidi. We're going to be talking AI, we're going to be talking L&D, we're going to be talking about his book. So without further ado, welcome, Rob. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, Tool, absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be good.
It's going to be absolutely great. So, like us, you are very much in that space of what does this new fangled technology of artificial intelligence mean to L&D strategy, L&D functions, L&D teams? Tell us, give us a summary of the type of work that you're doing and what are you hearing and seeing and feeling with L&D and AI right now?
Yeah, well, I think, when I first joined the L&D team, I was like, well, can we have a chatbot where people can just ask questions and get quick answers? So that was my instinct coming in. So, of course, a few years later, when ChatGPT came along, the light bulb came on. So I thought this is the way we can deliver, effectively. I mean, it's difficult to know exactly how to term it, but I think self-serve learning is not a bad sort of label for it, because it kind of flips the table from L&D being all about, well, we have L&D specialists who kind of curate content and then produce packages of knowledge, to being, with a GPT, you can kind of ask a question and get an atom of knowledge, if you like. So we're kind of exploding those packages into atoms again, and then people can go find that stuff. So that just opens up, even just like the simplest thing, like I want to be able to chat with my documents. We all know that phrase now because you can upload documents and chat with them. So suddenly you can unlock all those atoms of knowledge in there. So that's great because we produce good content and it doesn't get to the audience. But that's the first step. But then you can go beyond that to sort of, tutors and coaches where with the right prompting, you can do a very simple experiment yourself. It's sort of to say, don't give me the answer directly, but talk to me and understand where I am, what's my knowledge level, ask me to explain things back. So that's a massive thing. And actually, already we're seeing some companies, vendors out there who are growing really fast with this. And it's not just marketing puff. It's actually, this is genuinely valuable to Fortune 500 companies. There are one or two names I can mention, but that is getting real traction. It's not just a kind of oh, wouldn't it be great? It's actually, this is a product that's working. And then something as simple like a role play where you can define who you want to have a test conversation with, whether that be a difficult interpersonal conversation or with a client tomorrow. You can specify it, and it does a blooming good job at giving you some of the difficult questions that you've got to practice, and you can have a good exchange with that. And then I think the other big category for me is what I call conversational e-learn. So instead of your kind of 30 pages of content and then a multiple choice question, you have one page of content and then sort of say, over to you. What do you think the top 3 things are? So, and that's just really kind of the tip of the iceberg, because the more I talk to people in this space, people are experimenting, doing different things. It sounds like sci-fi, but it's actually happening today,
Yeah, it's funny hearing you talk about this stuff as well, Rob, because this is this is where we are, isn't it? This is what we're experimenting with as well. And I was actually working with a client this morning, and I said, what ideas have you got? How can AI help you in this space? And she just had no idea. I don't know. I don't know what it can do. And I think what you're describing now is that need for our skills shift to move from being able to facilitate role plays and coaching and all that stuff to actually having the ability to think creatively about how we can use AI to help us. So I think although we're experimenting and we're trying it, there's lots of people that want us to give them ideas, but actually you could reel off ideas all day, couldn't you? It's about thinking around how it works for you.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the reasons why people are reticent, is just because they don't know what will happen if they kind of open the box and all these things start pinging out. It's that sort of slight lack of control problem, which I think people it limits people's sort of interactions. But I think for me, having an AI role play in a training setting is not just a great way of doing role play, like democratizing role play, making it available to everyone. It's a great way of having a conversation about AI as well, because you can almost say, okay, that was the exercise. Now, what do we think about the stuff coming out of the AI, what do we think about what would happen if we changed the prompt? How can we, so it's not only you've done for, a negotiation workshop and you've added another dimension, you can have a conversation about AI and the kind of the ethics of it even, or you can talk, you can make it an upskilling, an AI upskilling thing as well as a negotiation upskilling thing.
Yeah, for sure. So Rob, you're obviously, you experience in-house with L&D. You've got lots of experience talking to vendors as part of your book research, and like us, got kind of lots of fingers in lots of different pies in terms of networks and things like that. What's the difference, or is there a difference between the traction that you're seeing in-house with teams versus external with consultants? Are they speaking the same language for the research that you've been doing, or is it a very different place at the moment?
I suppose, we were talking just before we, off air there about the culture in your enterprise that you work in, really setting the limits of where you can go with things. And I think inherently most corporates the constraints are much tighter in than they are for a consultancy, because consultants generally are there to open doors and change people's view. So I think there is a big difference between the kind of work that you're seeing consultants do, because they are by nature much more experimental and they're bringing cutting edge techniques. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, definitely. And like for those in-house L&D functions, if you kind of had to give them a top 3, things that they should be focusing on this year when it comes to AI, what would you say they would be?
For me, the power of the Q&A, let's say FAQs, frequently asked questions, is something that I think we all think, okay, I've got a new topic or a new bit of a training asset, I should probably have some frequently asked questions that go along with that, right? But what AI I found is very good at is extracting the frequently asked questions from any document. So what I've done with teams is to sort of say, well, look, give me your 20 best documents, and I'll just upload individually each one. We had an in-house corporate language model that so don't just throw this up to the nearest sort of public GPT, but if it's safe to do so, you can upload each of those documents and just say, what are the top 10 questions in this document? Give me a table of the questions and answers in this document, and it'll just do that, and it gives you that, and then you do that 20 times, 20 documents, you cut and paste those into a spreadsheet, and there you go. You've got quite a comprehensive Q&A. Now look, those questions they're not going to be mutually exclusive and comprehensive of everything in there, and they're not even necessarily going to be that correct, but for me, having a table where people can find the topic they're after. So I built this web app that allows you to put your search term in the top, and then it would filter down the 5 questions with that term in it, and then you could see it, and then you could click through to the document. And that simple thing, we were talking about the power of just chatting with your documents, putting that, it's basically like an index, but something searchable that people can find, and then they find that asset that you've been trying to make them read all this time, but it's never there when they need it. But then with that, you've got it. So that's one thing. Use it to make an FAQ table that links on to those assets that you want people to find. The other thing is, like we said about the role play, practice, try it out, some of those prompts, because it's amazing what you can do just with the GPT, the conversational interface. And sort of when you've gone, wow, that's amazing, try and get your sort of team to get involved, and then your boss, and then actually, look, can we do this next time we do a course, or can we just use it as a brainstorming partner in the room? So like we might say, okay, we're going to brainstorm, approaches to this thing. And then round 2 will be, you're going to use the GPT to be like a 5th person in the brainstorm team and see what they come up with. And then reserve some time for, what does it add? What was the nonsense that came up with? What do you think of that? You just use it. And that's using your construct to talk about AI as a tool. So it's sort of like an orthogonal dimension of like, let's talk about AI as well as whatever we were here to talk about. So it's those sorts of simple things,
And I guess that kind of helps people to integrate AI into the other stuff and not see it as a separate thing over here. I think that's really important with this as well. Is I'm not going to deal with AI right now because I don't know, it's going to take me too long, or I don't know what I can do with it. It's starting to integrate it into what people are doing all the time.
Definitely,
Yeah, it's another tool, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
sometimes we can get a bit scared of putting this thing on a pedestal and it becomes the all-encompassing thing that we all have to focus on. So 2 years ago, like people were thinking the metaverse was going to be like that.
Yeah.
3 years ago, like Zoom or Teams was going to be like that. But actually, it's just another tool, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we get a bit guilty of going all in on the brand new fangled shiny thing that we all get excited about in AI in L&D.
Yeah, I think it's sort of, I used to talk about in L&D, when you just take away all the excuses. It's like, oh, it's too hard to find. Well, you need to solve this search problem. But I think similarly with AI, it's like, if you can build it up as this big terrifying thing, then I'm sorry to say it, but it's like another excuse to not deal with it. It's kind of like you've blown it into such a big thing. So that it's a psychological thing, isn't it? That people just need to be cool with it and just treat it, like you say, as an experiment. And I think that's one of the big sort of the sort of like the headline from my book, basically, or at least the punchline, if you like, is to get out there and do some experiments, because that's really, I think, and it's changing from. I mean, we talk about return on investment loosely in L&D, and I'll borrow Tobias Svingman's phrase on this. It's go from return on investment (ROI) to R&D. So get into an R&D mindset where you might not get a million times better training course, or you might not deliver all this content, but you're going to find out a lot more, be a lot more data driven in your views. You can go back to your leadership and say, we've done these experiments, or remember that experiment, or we agreed that we would do, here are the results, and we're better informed now. Wouldn't it be amazing? So it's kind of, let's go, you're exploring now in this kind of jungle. So you just explore. Nobody knows what's out there. Just you got to get involved and start exploring. Otherwise, all those treasures that are in there will go unfound.
Yeah,
that need for curiosity, isn't it? And that's becoming one of the major skills now, is actually being able to ask the right questions and explore things, for sure. Have you noticed a difference from maybe when you were doing this 12 months ago, talking to L&D teams about AI, and where people are now? Has there been any shift, in terms of what we're hearing and seeing? Because I feel like, we're now into season 3 years of talking about this. What's changed? What's the difference now?
Yeah. Well, look, it's a journey, isn't it? And I think people have got some milestones behind them now. So, like, most people know what happens when you prompt, and they know a little bit about the way that the way you prompt will change the outcomes. And they may have even used sort of something like an authoring tool, like an AI-powered authoring tool, and they'll have an opinion about that. And I think as soon as people use it and familiarize themselves with it, they put it in their toolbox and they say, oh yeah, it's just a screwdriver, I've been using screwdrivers for years, like they treat it as if they're now fluent in it, which is great. So yeah, I think that's happening in terms of the maturity. A lot more people have got prompting in their toolbox, and they think, yeah, I've done that, I've got that now. And then some of them might be using authoring tools, and they might be sort of maybe running some experiments with prompting in an L&D setting. So yeah, I think it's just part of the journey, isn't it? I do like the S curve of adoption. There's it sort of goes very flat. Very few people are taking it up. Then suddenly it gets this inflection point where suddenly everyone wants in, and there's that tipping point, and then you get to the end where there's a few people who just will never convert, sort of thing, and so that change, the conversion from 0 to 1 starts flattening off, and you never quite get the last few. We're probably not there yet. I mean, I suppose, the uptake of what are you talking about? Authoring tools? Maybe we've turned the corner a bit on that. They're probably becoming a bit more accepted, but there are so many dimensions in AI that you'd have to draw a different curve for each one. But yeah, I think that we're definitely progressing along that journey.
Yeah, for sure. So go back to the book, Rob, that I know you've been working very hard on. Give us the title, give us, what the vision is. I know you've reached out to people like us in terms of vendors and that kind of stuff. What's your message? What are you looking to get across there?
Yeah, I mean, the book's called Chat L&D, which I'm hoping sort of both summons up, it's like ChatGPT, so it must be about generative AI, but it's L&D in the title. So it's really an exploration of what I've learned, and let's face it, this has only really been happening for two and a bit years, so it's not much in terms of content. I mean, so it's not a big book. It's just a guide to how do we get to where we are? What is the AI, and why perhaps is it actually not as bad as people say? Obviously, people worry about hallucination, but we've already moved beyond that to a large degree with the technology. So we're much more in safer sort of space there. It's something we really can use. So it sort of sets the scene, but then it's more about, okay, so how could L&D use this? So there's a few ideas started in there, and then there's a few of those ideas about how you could use it today in your training setting, even just using off the shelf version. But then the key thing really is I mean, the punchline of the book is to get out there and experiment. Get your R&D goggles on and do some experiments, because that's what it is. We were talking about that, just a minute ago. That change of mindset to being more about exploring, and that by bringing your stakeholders along and talking to the tech teams and your risk and legal people, that actually if you can say, listen guys, that here's some sort of, I'm going to say evidence, but some background on why this is really worth doing. This is what I want to do. Can we all agree that we're going to be able to do this? I mean, this is speaking from my own mistake of trying to be the pioneer all on my own, kind of doing this and not really bringing my team along, and ending up, expiring, in the exploration because I didn't have the support that I needed. So the recommendation is, look, talk early to your tech teams, your risk and legal people, try and get the buy-in, and do these experiments. And right now there are lots of startups and vendors out there who are very keen to work with corporate clients. So it's a real buyer's market in terms of picking a vendor that you get on with, that you think is going to be really collaborative, going to help build a solution that you can use. And that's the opportunity really, is to get out there and do some experiments with a vendor potentially, or maybe an in-house team, but just get out there and experiment.
Yeah. Which kind of, I think, leads us really nicely to, we asked you to kind of bring to the podcast one kind of practical key tip that you would share with anybody watching today's episode. And I wonder if you started to allude to it there slightly, but I won't steal your thunder. What would you say? What would your one piece of advice be, Rob, in regards to anybody watching today's episode?
Yeah, well, I think we've kind of already covered it. It's that explorer's mindset, or the discovery mindset. And I think even just those small experiments where you bring GPT into a classroom, for want of a better word, and use it in some instance, it's amazing how good that will feel, and how much of an achievement that will feel just to make that first step. And the results that you get may be unexpected, and will certainly add to your understanding, and the feedback you get from the folks in the room will be really informative as well. So yeah, I think to recap on what we were saying, that idea of being open to discovery and exploration, and I'd like to be able to guarantee, but there's a very high chance you'll find it's a really positive experience, both in terms of the learner reaction and the data that you gather, and the progress that it helps you make.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. And I think that's an important point, isn't it? Is try it, but also gather your data and analyze what's that story, what's that told you, whether that's a positive or a negative. All of it is learning, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, even if you were to ask a colleague to do some of the stuff that we're asking the AI to do, they wouldn't get it right first time. So there's got to be this mindset of exploring, going back and forth, and not just prompting and accepting what you've got first off, because we wouldn't do that in many other situations, really.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Rob. If people want to get hold of you, if they're interested in putting their name on a wait list for the book, or learning more about it when it's published, what's the best way for people to contact and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, find me on LinkedIn, and we'll put a link in the show notes, won't we, for people who want to go and get the book. I'm actually doing a kind of a Kickstarter launch, which I don't know if you're familiar with Kickstarter, but it's basically a funding platform where somebody, traditionally it's like I come up with this idea, and if enough people fund it, then I can make it. And if I don't get enough people, I'll give you your money back. So that is a feature of the platform, but it's also a good way of just seeing the book and seeing the other services that I offer, and being able to sort of make a basket of things available. So yeah, you'll be able to see the book, ebook, paperback, and my consulting services all in one page, and buy from those.
Nice. And we'll put the link to all of that into today's notes on YouTube as well. So if you're interested in learning more about Rob's services or the book that he's writing, or being part of the Kickstarter, it's always an exciting experience, in my opinion, then you can get involved then as well. Thank you so much to today's guest, and Hayley back for season 2. We season 3, we're well underway now. I guess it'll be interesting to see what our future guests also bring to us. So stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you very much for Rob for being with us. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode.
Superb. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks very much. And we will see you guys again for episode 2 soon. Thank you so much.